8 weeks. That's how little time is left for two top Democrats to pull off what was once considered, if not impossible, then certainly improbable. Can Gavin Newsom convince Californians to redraw their congressional districts? And can Zoran Mamdani become mayor of New York City despite a last-ditch effort by his fellow Democrats and maybe even the White House to stop him? Let's find out this week on this week's edition of Whole Hog Politics. I'm Bill Sammon, joined by my old pal Chris Stirewalt. We both work at the Hill and News Nation, but only you, Chris, are the author of Whole Hog Politics, the superb political newsletter published each Friday in the Hill. By the way, you can sign up for the newsletter, which is free, by scanning the QR code on your screen right now.
Do it. Hurry.
A lot to cover this week, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Ranging from midterm fundamentals to the vibe shift hitting Malcolm Gladwell, and two lofty philosophical questions. One, do our rights emanate from God or the government? And two, will there be a UFC cage match on the White House South Lawn? But let's start with California Governor Gavin Newsom, who suddenly finds himself the early front runner for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2028. The Hill's Amy Parnes had a story about it this week where Democrats were, quote unquote, obsessed with Newsom, with one strategist even saying the party is less worried about policy specifics than finding someone who can win. So my question to you, Chris, does Newsom's front runner status go away if California fails to approve his plan to redraw the state's congressional district in such a way to give Democrats an edge in the midterm elections?
I'm sure it would. Yes, it would be a huge bust for Newsom, but I don't think that's very likely. Certainly, it's anything is possible, and a lot can change over the course of the fall. But right now, every indication is that California, a very blue state, is very angry at Donald Trump, and Gavin Newsom has artfully crafted a persona and a message that says, if you hate Trump, go vote for this. And I suspect there was a New York Times piece about how much money is going to be sunk into this effort, hundreds of millions of dollars. And I thought, well, it's not just Democrats who get vetoed. It's Republicans get vetoed sometimes too. The idea of dumping $100 million into a very blue state to try to change this election, I don't know. The teachers' unions, organized labor, the turnout problem will definitely be on the Republican side, and I doubt it would make a difference.
Well, you know, I used to think that it would be something that would probably pass in Newsom's favor, but I'm hearing more and more people say that it's not a sure thing by any stretch. I mean, you've got a lot of money, as you say, going in on both sides, $100 million on either side, probably. You got people like, you know, former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger is against it. It's not a slam dunk. I mean, you're asking Californians to sidestep this do-gooder, commission that they set up to redraw the lines in a nonpartisan way and say, well, let's be partisan this time, and then we'll come back to being nonpartisan in the future. It's an ask, it's a lift, and it's different than, Texas, which is, in Texas, they just, the lawmakers just said, we're just going to redraw the lines. We don't have any obstacles like they have in California. So
the reason Newsom has seen an increase in his popularity, and the reason that, look, obviously things can happen, and it could turn out that it would be a massive quagmire, right? This could be, it is a big bet, but the odds are in his favor, and the odds are in his favor because, for the same reason that Donald Trump succeeded with Republicans 8 years ago, which is, you remember the phrase, but he fights, right? What I have observed in the Democratic Party, they got a lot of problems. Democrats have innumerable problems, and we can talk about how that will affect Senate recruiting, and that will affect midterms, what the problems will be in a state like Michigan and other places where the Democratic base, the progressive left, the Zoran Mamdani, AOC community, all of that is real within the Democratic Party and poses substantial risks for the party's gains next year. But here's what Democrats have figured out. And I watched this on the whipped up phony concern about Donald Trump being dead on the internet. I've watched this around the Epstein files. I'm now watching Gavin Newsom do this. The idea is not that we're going to talk about what we believe in. We're going to talk about why the other people are corrupt, and we're going to use any means necessary. So a thing happened in American politics. You remember old Glenn Beck?
Oh, yeah.
And there was a period of time where a lot of folks, especially on the very online right, became convinced that Saul Alinsky, that this villain Saul Alinsky had, with his book Rules for Radicals, taught the progressive left how to fight, and Republicans were just chumps. They're taking the abuse. There was some truth in what he said and the way that progressives and socialists and communists fought, but not nearly as much truth as they claim. But Republicans still adopted those tactics, right? By any means necessary. Say that cable news hosts had murdered their interns. Say that Ted Cruz's father had killed JFK. Say or do anything, disrupt the conversation, nuke them, and we'll
Personalize it, make it about that person. I remember some of these rules.
So the right embraced, it's a woke right, a Alinskyite right that we see very much personified in somebody like J.D. Vance. We see it, right? And it was effective. Now the Democrats are going back to their own playbook, right? They're going back to the approach, which is we can argue about what we want to do later. What we need to do now is ruin other people. And watching Donald Trump have to respond to the online frenzy around allegations that he was dead because he was playing golf over the Labor Day break, I thought, oh, they're figuring it out. Watching when I saw the Epstein victims press conference,
Yeah.
I thought, what does this remind me of? And I said, oh, yeah. When Donald Trump debated Hillary Clinton at Washington University in 2016, Donald Trump brought Bill Clinton's victims
Yes, right. To sit in the front
to
row.
sit in the front row.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
thought, oh, they're getting it. They have figured out that, and Democrats say all the time, you have to fight fire with fire. Well, they're doing it. I don't know whether it will succeed in the long run, but the cynical bargain that Gavin Newsom is offering California Democrats is put those principles aside. And Barack Obama even came out and said, "Yeah, we got to do something nasty." And I think that energy has taken hold in the Democratic Party in a really profound way.
Well, Michelle Obama even sort of went back on her old, when they go low, we go high. She's now basically saying, no, we're going to go low too.
Yeah, burn it all down.
And burn it all down. And what you just said really helps me understand the quote from Amy Parnes' story where a Democratic strategist was saying, look, we'll sort out the policies later. We want a guy who can win. That's why we're buzzing about Newsom. And I thought, wow, sort out the policies later. This is where we're at now. But I think you just articulated why. That it isn't so much about the policies now. It's about who can own the other side, who can humiliate them, who can beat them.
Yes, we live in an era of just pure power politics. And as we watch the Trump administration, second Trump administration, do 8 million things a day, right? From the time you arise in the morning until you take to your bed, the 50 things will happen in the course of the day. Some of those things Republicans like, some of those things Republicans hate, some of those things are popular, some things are unpopular. We're blowing up gun running or drug running boats, we're smacking tariffs on, it's all of this stuff. And part of that is just Trump, but another part of it is, and this is something that Democrats will have to reckon with someday, if you don't have an argument about what you believe in and you don't fight over that, and there are places where Republicans did have that fight, but if you don't argue over that, what you end up with is bossism or big manism. And by which, and we have a lot of precedent for this in American history, what we believe is what the boss believes. And that is whether Gavin Newsom can sustain bossism and get it there and get all the way through a nominating process, I'm highly skeptical. But right now, he is successfully engaging in a Trumpian bossism.
Let's talk about another leading Democrat that's getting a lot of attention. That's Zohran Mamdani, who's running for mayor of the city of New York. The latest development is that the White House has allegedly offered jobs to get two of Mamdani's rivals out of the race so that the remaining rival, Andrew Cuomo, could actually have a chance at beating him. So it's complicated, but basically Mamdani is the Democratic Socialist. He beat Cuomo in the primary, shocked the political world. Cuomo's now running as an independent against him, but there's two other people muddying up the race and splintering all the votes, and that's the incumbent Eric Adams mayor. He's now running as an independent, and also the Republican, the token Republican, Curtis Sliwa. So the story is that if Trump or the White House somehow gets Sliwa and Adams out of the race by offering them jobs in the public sector or even the private sector, that the race will not be so splintered anymore, and maybe, just maybe, Cuomo can beat him. So my question is this: who does Trump really want to be mayor of New York City? In other words, we've talked about the political utility of having a Democratic socialist as the mayor of New York City, who would be a perfect foil for Trump. On the other hand, Trump must feel some, imperative to he's got a lot of business friends in New York City.
And business.
And business in New York City. And he probably wants the city to succeed on some level.
Is he
conflicted on this?
And not be if the most likely outcome occurs, which is that Zohran Mamdani becomes the mayor of New York City, not only is there the whatever emotional part of this for Donald Trump, but there's also Donald Trump has a lot of real estate, a lot of stuff in New York City, and I doubt that Mamdani working with Letitia James, who Donald Trump is trying to put in jail, and other Democrats in New York will be wonderful partners in advancement for the Trump organization. Trump has a functional.
The zoning commission meetings are going to be
lit. Yeah, Trump has had a functional relationship with Cuomo. Cuomo was governor of New York for 100 million years, and Trump obviously had. And Trump, a former Democrat, did a lot of business with a lot of Democrats in the city and in the state. I assume that is for Trump a more favorable outcome. But let's stipulate one thing or two things. Number one, Eric Adams is rapidly heading for a rounding error in the polls, right? Yeah. Eric Adams is not Cuomo's problem. Cuomo's problem is that he has not articulated, and maybe there is no desire for what he's offering, right? And this effort, and I have my doubts that it even came from Trump. I have a feeling that this is something coming from New Yorkers, John Casamidis or other prominent Trump Republicans or Trump supporters in New York, who they want this because they live there and they want to stay in New York.
Yeah.
But I don't think it helps Cuomo to have Donald Trump to be Donald Trump's preferred candidate in this race. But
right.
Adams is.
But does it help Cuomo? Does it actually help if Adams is becoming a rounding error? Does it even matter if he and Sliwa get out?
So that's point
lose?
Two. Curtis Sliwa. Curtis Sliwa presents a Pencean problem for Team Trump. Curtis Sliwa has the inconvenient habit of believing the things that he says. And it's easy, and I've done it too, to make sport of Sliwa, the founder of the Guardian Angels, who until recently he has abandoned his red beret. Yeah. But he was sort of a figure of fun in New York politics. Listen to what he's saying. and he excoriates Adams for even thinking about, for even entertaining this, and vows he will never. Curtis Sliwa loves New York City. I take him at his word, and he is unlikely, of course, to prevail in this contest. But I think for a lot of Republicans who, whatever the MAGA Borg is saying, you need to vote for Andrew Cuomo, they hate Andrew Cuomo. They hate Andrew Cuomo. They hated him when he was governor. They hated him during COVID. They hate him. And the idea that they're going to shun Sliwa, who's been with them and in the doing their thing with them, the folks on Staten Island, that Sliwa's kept the faith, that they're going to ditch him and vote for a Democrat. Look, there's some self-interested voting that takes place. People say, well, this is the better choice for us. But look, I think if there was a grand plan here, if there were these machinations to tip Cuomo in, Adams ain't the problem. You can give Adams whatever, you can make him secretary of whatever. You can have it, he can lead the Space Force, doesn't matter. And that still doesn't resolve the problem. Now, all that having been said, I'm watching Cuomo really put his shoulder into it. I'm watching him run hard, and I am watching the it points to what the Trump people are doing, points to the weakness of Mamdani. All of those voters that Cuomo needs, these are a lot of government employees. These are a lot of typically Democratic, a lot of Hispanic, Black, second generation immigrant families, folks in the outer boroughs. Those are the people who made Adams mayor the first time. And now Cuomo needs them in force. And I think the way the race looks to me is it's unlikely that Cuomo will surpass him. But if Cuomo can get enough of the Sliwa people to make him their second choice, which might not be too big a lift, this is where ranked choice voting may actually redound to the benefit of benefit of a mainstream candidate.
Second place.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Let's talk, Chris, we kind of alluded to this earlier, but let's talk a bit about the midterms. You write in your column this week about the fundamentals to watch for when you're trying to figure out which way the midterms are going to go. And those three fundamentals are the president's approval rating, special elections, and retirements. And we've talked about some of this before, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to gently disagree with you here in that.
I know you love redistricting. You're obsessed.
No, I don't love the redistricting.
No, you love to talk about it. You're obsessed.
But you you say that these are the fundamentals, and therefore they're more important than redistricting, and so let's not really, think of redistricting as a factor. I say
that's not what it says. That is very clearly
what you said.
You're simplifying. You're simplifying. What I said was, and I was looking for it so that I could say the words before you slandered me. What I said was, we don't mean to completely poo-poo all of the talk about the importance of the gerrymandering arms race that has broken out since Texas tried to lasso 5 more seats for the GOP. But we should poo-poo a little. Midterm elections depend on how districts are drawn, certainly, but not nearly as much as the overall political climate. Midterms are always referenda on the party in power. So how likely voters are feeling about the direction of things matters the most. So
you pay lip service to it, and then you move on to it. But what I'm saying is this, Chris: what if redistricting is one of the fundamentals? What if there are 4 fundamentals, and this time being an unusual cycle where all of these states have lost their minds and are redrawing all their maps in the middle of the decade instead of at the end of the decade? What if that becomes a fundamental? All I'm saying is, in a close election, that could make a difference. Some people are saying the Republicans, by the way, if the Democrats, if Newsom fails to get this thing over the finish line in 8 weeks, and it does fail, then we're in a situation where Texas presumably if they pick up the 5 seats, and again that can change up or down.
Listen to
That
where
doesn't
you've
get
already
canceled
taken
out.
yourself. You're trying to make this strong assertion, and you're already down to like, well, and if it doesn't actually turn out to the 5 seats, and blah 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 blah.
Well,
No, look,
you know,
I take your point. You're absolutely right, and my acknowledgement of it was more than lip service. Here's a way to think about it. Picture a coal mine, as I often do, as a West Virginian. Picture a coal mine.
freedom fuel.
The redistricting is part of what's the proven reserve, right? What is the potential universe of voters, and how much is available? That's what's in the ground. And midterms will affect what is it, or the redistricting will affect what is in the ground. We don't know exactly how much. Will Maryland counterstrike? We got Missouri coming. We got blah blah blah. And it's very possible we get to the end of this and Republicans have said, we got 2 seats. We netted out 2 seats or something. Okay.
Or 7.
Or 7 or none, or
Yeah.
we don't, the assay work on figuring out what the proven reserve of potential, setting the number of swing seats, will not be finished until next summer. And it won't be finished until next summer because Texas is gone. Now California will go, other states will go. You know what else will happen? There will be court decisions, and we're seeing them come in already. There will be court decisions challenging congressional maps around the country, and there will be decisions and state Supreme Court rulings that will be appealed, and all, which is by the way, part of life in every cycle. Every cycle. North Carolina's had more maps. Well, North Carolina's had more maps than Bill Belichick had points scored on him in his debut. So that's all. We'll see next summer what all of that has added to, and that will be part of next summer. We can look at who won the registration wars. Did Democrats catch up on registration? We'll look at demographic changes in the districts. We'll look at all of the stuff that will affect what is in the proven reserve of potential voters. And gerrymandering is definitely very much a part of that. What I'm encouraging you to do is, that's the proven reserve. Now let's talk about the mining. Let's talk about the mining it out, about transforming what's in the ground into coal in the hopper,
Votes.
How do you get it out of the ground?
Getting them to the polls, getting people excited. And that, by the way, we talked about earlier, these mini conventions next year to ramp up the bases.
Again.
But we have these assumptions, and I realize why these are built in sort of rules of politics. Like in the midterms, the electorate is smaller, the excitable side is the opposition party. All of those things are true until they're not as true. You know what I mean?
It's always a matter of degrees, right?
Yeah.
It's always a matter of degrees. Democrats had a bad year in 2022. They had a bad year, but it wasn't as bad as they thought it would be. And so what Republicans are looking for, should be looking for in 2026 is, it's not going to be a good year, right? It's not going to be a good year. How do we mitigate that? And swiping a few seats in redistricting and doing that stuff, that can be part of mitigation. But what I'm encouraging people to do.
That's all I was asking you to acknowledge.
What I'm encouraging you to do and our viewers to do is, there's a few baselines. You could have 50 baselines, right? There are a bunch of other things that I would, if I didn't respect our readers' time, I would have included. You could include consumer confidence numbers. You could include other indices of what is the state of things? How are people feeling? But there are 3 that I included. The first most important ever and always throughout history is the strong correlation between presidential approval and the party's midterm performance. The 2 times since World War II that the party in power did not lose seats in the House and Senate as a whole. It's a recruiting story. It's a different story. There's more ticket splitting in the Senate. it's much simpler to focus on the House for now and say the two occasions in which the party in power did not lose House seats, both had incumbent presidents with approval ratings over 60%. George W. Bush and Bill Clinton. Then you go down the list and you see, and that's why we use for the HOG, that's why we use a net score, right? So we say, we don't say, oh, 41, that's bad. We say, okay, what's the approval versus the disapproval? Subtract, and there's your score. And that's how far you are underwater. Because
Right.
if you have not that intense opposition, but lukewarm support, I think that was sort of a Biden story. It was hard for Republicans to manufacture the hate for Biden in 2022 that Democrats have for Trump now. So you look at that score. If Donald Trump is still 13 points underwater next year, the Republicans it's going to be bad. It may be less,
Yeah.
it may be less bad, but it's going to be bad. Conversely, we're going to watch that number. If that number gets better for Trump and he gets it, there's a world in which Donald Trump gets that down to single digits. He gets his approval rating up to 45, 46, which is, not unthinkable. That's where he was 5 months ago. He could do that. That's hardly unreasonable. And if disapproval softens, right? If lightly attached Democrats and moderates say, yeah, I don't know, he says a lot of things, but I like how things are going, I'm okay, and disapproval goes down, and he's 6 points, 7 points underwater, I can see Republicans holding the House. It's a goal line stand. It's a brutal smash mouth football kind of thing, but they do it. So
Right.
we track that one. We're going to track that one all the way through. Then we want to look at how are the parties doing in these special elections. Now, you've been in the news business even longer than me. And the thing that happens. You have a special election, and the party that wins the special election says, this is proof that we will forever be the majority. And the party that's out of power, or the party that loses, says, well, this means nothing. And you
It's an
go,
anomaly.
right, this is unrelated. That's not what history tells us. What history tells us is that your performance in these special elections is an indicator of how fired up your base is. So this California thing, the Newsom grab will be another data point. It's a special election. How much better or worse will Democrats do with that election? How much better or worse will they do in New Jersey, Virginia, and elsewhere than Donald Trump did in those places in 2020 or in 2024? What's the delta? It's currently, for Democrats, they're running 15 points ahead of where they were. That's better than Republicans were doing in 2022. But the cautionary tale for Democrats is the Republican performance in 2021 was real good. It was after they got over the January 6th hangover, those numbers started to go up, and they started to get to 10 points or so over performance. The gubernatorial candidates in New Jersey and Virginia were both 6 points, 6 or 7 points better than Trump had done in those states before. So you're tracking. And then for Republicans, and this is why we're going to continue to track it, is it started to fall off. They got into the midterm year itself, and that number started to decline. And in a couple special elections, Democrats actually surprised Republicans. So we'll watch that on the radar to see that as a measurement of the base index. And then the third one is retirements. The retirements are the retiring members of Congress are both the result of and cause of difficult climates for their parties. Right now, 15 House members have said that they're not going to seek re-election. 10 Republicans and 5 Democrats. That's a pretty typical split. I think I still have my numbers here somewhere on the legal pad of destiny. But the verdict of here it is. This is our highly scientific whole hog scratch pad. But in 2022, 31 Ds, 18 Rs. In 2018, 18Ds, 34 Rs. So you see the trend.
Yeah.
If you think you're going to lose, that's a good time
Get
to give
out.
up. It's a
Yeah.
good time to give
It's
up.
no fun being in the
It's
minority,
no fun being in
right?
the minority, and it's a good time to go. And who wants to go through it, right? And
Yeah.
when you see somebody like Joni Ernst announce her retirement in Iowa, you say, what do you know that I don't know, right? What do
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
that I don't know? Because they are canaries in the coal mine when their members want out. They know their districts. They have spent their whole lives studying their own districts, and they may be seeing some. It's a crowdsourced way to get the
Yeah.
energy. So if the chalk would be the normal thing would be that there'd be 40 to 45 retirements for this cycle. That would be a normal attrition rate. And what would be normal would be that there would be about 50% more of the party in power than the party out of power. This time it's really, really interesting because the margin is so historically narrow in the House, and Democrats only
Right.
need to flip 3 seats. So this one's going to be a particularly useful index for me
Yeah.
as we go
Because
forward.
it'll skew more significantly because there's just so many fewer seats to play with. Chris, you also host
Oh,
a show
do I
called
ever?
The Hill Sunday. It airs on Sunday morning on News Nation. And I was just curious, what's happening this Sunday on The Hill
I
Sunday?
like the casualness, just like we just ran into each other at the coffee shop. Like, what are you doing this weekend, Chris? And I'm stalling for time while I look up who our guests are because
Well, thematically, what are you
thematically,
doing? I mean,
thematically.
yeah.
Well, we've got a House Republican and a House Democrat. I know that. And I know that I was excited about who they were when they were booked. And I'm sorry that I can't I'm sorry my scratch pad of destiny does not have the right information on it. But I'm very, very, very excited about our B Block guest, Thomas Chatterton Williams, my colleague from the American Enterprise Institute, whose book about what happened in 2020 is superb. It is truly superb. And he wrote about basically how the country lost its mind and how. Did you see Phil Mendelson of the District of Columbia's City Council come out and favor a big pay increase for police and basically acknowledge everything not everything, but most of what he and other people were saying after the George Floyd murder was deeply misguided.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
profoundly the idea of defund the police was so stupid, so patently, obviously stupid. This is on par with people will.
Malcolm Gladwell saying that he was ashamed. He's now saying he was ashamed at having been cowed, in his words, into saying that biological men should play in
Women's sports.
But it's all of these things are part of the vibe shift, right? I mean, this is, it was sort of the pendulum goes too far one way and then it starts to swing back the other way, and maybe it goes too far. We're going to have a UFC fight on the South Lawn next year. So
And Thomas's book is a superb chronicle of how the country, particularly the left, lost its mind in 2020.
Oh, I love
And
it.
it's really, really good. And he has been delivering some excellent commentary and excellent writing about how, just as you say, that virus has also now absorbed the minds of the right, the woke right, and the speech police right, and the snowflake right, and this competing snowflakeism and excess. Here's the one thing I can tell you: nobody currently seems to appreciate that people want their lives to be good and they want their families and homes to be safe and prosperous. And for the governing plurality of this nation, they care a lot more about outcomes than inputs. They care a lot more about it. And watching these new jobs reports, the new jobs numbers came out today, and you think about how some Republicans have said, well, we're going to go through a period of pain. We're going to go through a period of pain. But then on the other side, it's going to be really good. And I think, you're microdosing? What are you talking about? The backlash occurs when the people in power forget what persuadable voters want. And what persuadable voters want is to have nice things and have good lives.
That's all the time we have for this week. I'm Bill Sammon, as usual, joined by my old pal Chris Stirewalt. We will see you next time on Whole Hog Politics.